this is so unfortunate because I work with so many of my clients who are in the pre-diabetes and they're like, I wish my doctor had told me something sooner. So when you're in that range between 5.5% to like 5.9, that is like, you have control of what's going to happen.
Hi, this is Dr. Meenal, and welcome to Uncover Your Eyes, where we uncover reality. As a mom and eye doctor, I want to know it all. I have struggled with weight loss, health issues, and borderline sugars my whole life. I guess it's inevitable with my South Asian genetics, binge eating, nighttime eating probably the wrong foods, a lot of oily foods, a lot of fast foods, and a lot of just saturated fats, whether it's the chip bags or whatever's easy, the grab and goes. But I feel like I've tried things. I've cut down on things. I've cut down on certain foods, oily foods. I have tried eating more healthier salads and counting calories. I've done everything to see if that can help my sugar levels, my health, my weight, everything. Nothing helped. I got to a point where I felt eating like a bird, pecking food, pecking salad, salad for lunch, salad for dinner, and nothing was changing. My sugars were actually going up. I was confused. I was testing every morning, every night. I was like, you know what? I'm not losing weight. I'm not having healthy sugars, and I'm more tired. I'm not having enough sleep or good sleep, I would say. I'm getting moody. I have lack of energy. That was a big one. Lack of energy with my kids, like being able to sit down and playing with them for longer periods of time. And that's when I knew something was wrong. My body was not processing sugar the way it should. And it was beyond me. I needed help. That's when I decided I'm getting that outside help. I cannot tell you the things that I have learned that have changed my life within a month. Within a month of changing my lifestyle, my eating habits, my food pairing, understanding all of that has changed everything dramatically. From my mood being better, more energized, my skin being better, not to say, having more energy to be with my kids, playing with them outside, definitely sleeping better. So sleeping throughout the night, sleeping faster, and not to mention, of course, the added bonus of weight loss. And my sugars have been good. So if you feel this is you, because I feel there are so many of us out there that struggle with this, then today's episode is going to rock your world. Today I have with me Anar Allidina. She is someone that helped change my life. She's a registered dietitian who specializes in helping people struggling with insulin resistance, including prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, and helps to better manage symptoms of PCOS. She does so by helping clients balance their blood sugars, boost energy and mood, and decrease cravings without giving up your favorite foods or following a very restrictive diet. And that's key, without giving up your favorite foods, because I didn't want to live my life giving up my favorite foods. So please join me in welcoming Anar Allidina. Thanks, Anar, for being on today. We're really happy and excited to have you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, there's a lot of stress in healthcare nowadays. We're experiencing stress, whether it's patient stress, family stress, work-life balance stress. Like, where do you think that increase is coming from? Like, does it have to do with things in particular that you feel we have control over?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great question. And you mentioned it so nicely that, the stress, just working with patient, right? Being a healthcare worker, you go into this profession to help people, right? And with everything going on, especially with the pandemic, right? That was a lot of stress on the healthcare workers because people had to change everything, their way how they saw their patient care. And I think that, yes, that was a a major stressor. And, people's jobs were impacted. I remember I was working at a clinic in Toronto and they actually closed down for a few months.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so we were all worried about what's going to happen and navigating that whole situation. So, yes, the last few years, I feel like the stress has really compounded. But then, like I said, being a healthcare worker, you want to help people. And, with so many things going on, a lot of diseases are increasing, like the statistics for pretty much
Yeah.
a lot of diseases keep on going up. And, you want to do your best. And then also our healthcare system, it's great that it's universal, but it also has, some drawbacks to it too. We see a lot of patients, there's wait lists, all of that. So all of those demands do add up and it is very stressful. One of my clients, he's an emerge doctor. And, if he wants to eat healthy, like he's just like, when I'm on, like, I'm back to back to back. So finding that time to even have a lunch or to, take care of yourself in those small pockets of time is very
Yeah.
challenging.
Yeah.
So
That's how I feel. Like I don't get time in the day to eat, and even if I schedule that lunch, it's like I'm always backed up or there's always some new problem that happens and we can't predict it. So it's like, grab and go fast and like binge eating or like just like that bag of chips, whatever's easy. Like sometimes I'll go to the back and just eat gum, like because I need something in my mouth. So, I agree with that. Does it have to do like does this all this maybe not even eating sometimes till 4 o'clock or just having a cup of coffee, like do these things affect our sugars at all?
absolutely it does. So stress is obviously diet is a big component of blood
Right.
sugar, but so is stress because when we are stressed, our cortisol levels are impacted, and cortisol is a stress hormone and it impacts our insulin, which is another hormone. So they rise together. So, our body's not doing a great job of being able to utilize that blood sugar properly because our insulin levels are high and then our blood sugar levels are elevated. So that can definitely have a role. So when you are stressed, you really do want to pay attention to everything else because it does connect. It's like a domino effect. So when, one
Right.
hormone is elevated, they all kind of work in a symphony. That's how you want your
Right.
hormones. And, cortisol is, our biggest stress hormone, and that has a
Right.
direct impact on our insulin levels.
So, like, people, individuals who are healthy, no family history of diabetes, or, they don't feel like they could have diabetes or high sugars. So, these healthcare providers could even have high sugars just because of their stress.
Yes, absolutely. Because remember, right, when
Interesting.
we
Okay.
stress, and think about a time when you've been under a lot of stress,
Yeah.
we tend not to make the best healthy choices, right? So when we're stressed, we may not be eating better or eating properly for that matter. We may be skipping meals. And like you mentioned,
Yeah.
when you do have that minute or 5 minutes to eat, you're grabbing something with
Yeah.
energy, right? You're not taking that time to be mindful and, think about what you need, the nutrients that you need. So you're not making the best food choices. You may not have the time to exercise when you're really stressed because you're just constantly, putting out fires maybe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
your sleep can also be heavily impacted with stress as well. So, all of these things impact our insulin and our blood sugar levels. So, if you're living like this, continually for, a few months even, that can really play a toll in your health for sure.
Wow. Okay. So tell me, like, should people, in mid-age range, 30 to 50, be checking their sugars? Like, I mean, I would assume like maybe if I had it in my genetics, or maybe if I was like not a healthy eater, okay, or I was severely overweight, like I would check my sugars, of course. But should the average person, including healthcare professionals, be checking their
Okay.
sugars?
So,
And how often? Sorry, I should say, if you recommend it.
okay. So, if you do not have a health or family health history, okay, and you are relatively healthy, like you mentioned, like healthy weight, I would definitely, definitely, definitely always get annual blood work done to give a snapshot
Okay.
of where you
Yeah.
are at, because that is going to tell us a lot more. So then you can have, and a lot of people don't go for a physical, an annual physical,
Yeah.
right? So that is super important for everyone. And that you can see, what your A1C is, which is a very robust measure of your blood sugars. It looks it's not just a 1 day measurement, it's 3 months. So the A1C, hemoglobin A1C, looks at the amount of sugar that's stuck around your red blood cell. And your red blood cell lives for about 120 days, like 3 months approximately. So that is a very
Mm.
good indicator of where your blood sugar levels are at. So if you are, and in Canada, prediabetes is from 6% to 6.4%. Above 6.5 is considered type 2. But we also have a
Okay.
high risk range, which unfortunately, I guess doctors don't do a great job of telling their patients that. So if you're in the range of 5.5 to 5.9, that's considered pre-diabetes. And if you are in that range, and sometimes you might be at a 5.5, 5.6, and your doctor may not say anything because it's still considered.
Yes, 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 agree.
Yeah. And, this is so unfortunate because I work with so many of my clients who are in the pre-diabetes and they're like, I wish my doctor had told me something sooner. So,
Because they are told everything's good,
right,
correct? Yeah.
it's on the high end of normal. So when you're in that range between 5.5% to like 5.9, that is like you have control of what's going to happen. So, it's so important that you get your annual blood test done to see where your metabolic markers are at. And it's, sometimes you can, depending on your physician, you can ask like what is trending, you can see from past years.
Yeah.
But even if, your doctor doesn't do that, you now, I guess with our healthcare, it's great because you can log in and you can get copies of your blood work. So you can do that yourself
Yeah. Yeah.
too and see from like previous years how things are trending. And if things are going upwards, then, you definitely want to keep an eye on that and make some changes. Anyone is at risk for diabetes, type 2 diabetes, after the age of 40, 45. And then there's some ethnic groups that are just predisposed to having developing type 2 diabetes, like being South Asian, Hispanic, Arab backgrounds, being African American, or, so all of those, there are certain ethnic groups that are just at a higher risk. So if you fall in that category, you definitely want to be careful.
Yeah. Just to share with our listeners, like I'm a healthcare provider, um, and I was also told that my sugars were normal, and I thought it was okay, right? I didn't really care to look at the number,
Right.
nor look at the range of pre or borderline, sugars, and so, um, yeah, things just kept getting worse, and that's when I met you, Anar. But like, it's so important that we actually start logging on to the Life Labs portals or your lab portals and checking those sugars and seeing what the normal range is. Because when you get that phone call from your family doctor who just says everything's good and you just believe it, then you're like, oh, okay, I could have had more control sooner, right?
And that's
So
the
that's important.
biggest kind of, I don't want to say regret, but, when people like,
Yeah.
I had no idea. I wish I had known this. I've been going to my doctor forever and they hadn't
Yes.
mentioned anything. And it's just unfortunate. And this comes back to kind of like our healthcare system, right? The doctors don't have that much time with their patients, so it's tricky. It's definitely tricky.
It's
So
tricky. Yeah.
everyone needs to
Yeah.
be their own advocate when it comes to their health. You need to ask the questions. You need to keep
Absolutely.
logs of whatever you're doing, and keep an eye on that for sure.
Absolutely. I agree because I've experienced it firsthand. And I think as healthcare providers, we're like our worst doctors, I guess is the word, or like, we don't take care of ourselves as much as we take care of our
Right.
patients, right? So we should be, more in tune with our stress levels, our eating habits. So tell me, like, in a day, it's very stressful, right? To go to work and have, eat quickly and maybe not even eat the right things, right? So for me, I would go to work and I'd eat an apple like as a snack. And I thought that was great, right? But my sugars were going up. And I was like, what's going on? Like I'm eating healthy, or I'd have that salad and my sugars were going up. So tell me, like, what are things, I know it's a very broad question, but tell me maybe in small bits, like what are your suggestions, like, in terms of, like, do I just cut down all my carbs, like, and have that salad, and my sugar should get better? Like, what are your suggestions for eating throughout the day when we're stressed and we have no
Yeah.
time?
So definitely that's a really good question. And the first thing that I want you to think about is what you can add to your diet instead of taking things away. So,
Mm,
if you are concerned with your blood sugar, so you want to add protein. This is
Okay.
the most important macronutrient. And protein helps stabilizes our blood sugar. So when we're having carbohydrate, that protein kind of works with our carbs, so it's slowly digested. It slows down the digestion. So protein takes one of the
Okay.
macronutrients that takes longest to digest. So that means we're full for longer. So especially if
Mm.
you are really busy, really focusing on protein is going to be your biggest, takeaway. So protein, especially your first meal of the day, you want to really make sure that you are getting enough protein. Typically, you want to aim for at least 20 grams of protein. So that is maybe you have 2 eggs and a slice of whole grain bread. That would be very close to 20 grams. You could do anything that comes from an animal is going to be a great source of protein, but we also have plant-based protein as well. And
Yeah.
yeah, so just making sure you are getting or you know where the protein is coming from in your diet and you want to start your
Yeah.
day with protein. So it doesn't necessarily mean you need to cut out your carbohydrates. You just want to make sure you're having protein with your carbs. So that example that you gave with the apple, yeah, the apples are great. They're healthy. There are a lot of nutrients, but there's no protein in that. So if you are having an apple to kind of help sustain you, it's not going to last you for very long. But if you add a piece of cheese to it or some nuts, that's going to keep the fullness factor much higher than just having an apple on its own. So you want to see what you can add to kind of combine that fruit or that carb to make it last, for a while until your next meal.
Yeah. And I think that what you said earlier was key. Like, I think me being vegetarian, right? So a lot of plant-based diets, like I always was like, well, and I don't like eggs. So it was very hard for me in the mornings to stay full. And one of the suggestions I think you gave me was so great. It was, something as simple as just, a piece of bread with avocado and cottage cheese, right? You get that protein from the cottage cheese. And it was like, oh, but also learning to flavor things properly such that you'll eat it, right? I would never eat cottage cheese unless now, I've learned how to sprinkle it with some, some flavor so that it tastes better, right? I think it's taking that time to figure out what will be good for our palate and what will actually be sustainable, I guess, as
Yeah.
well, right? Things we will continue eating.
Yes. So yeah, there is an element of trying to figure out what works, what you like, because you definitely want to enjoy what you're eating as well, and that's going to keep you full and sustain you. That's obviously key. And there are so many different ways, and this is why working with a dietitian can be so helpful because you can personalize the recommendations and
Yeah,
come up with ideas on recipes or ingredients that you can add to make it suit your taste buds for sure.
right.
Yeah.
So eating breakfast is important,
Yeah.
correct?
100.
Okay.
Especially if you are, a very busy person, because sometimes, like you said, I know you don't take lunch really because you're, seeing your patients and meetings and things just come up, like you said. So if you know that that's the case for you, that your day is unpredictable, then 100% you want to start your day with having a good breakfast. Because that's going to, when we have the one thing that everyone should be doing is making sure that they have a solid breakfast that is with enough protein, because this is going to help regulate your hunger. It's going to help
Yeah.
stabilize your blood sugar. It's going to be more leveled. And, remember, our blood sugars are a reflection of how we feel. So when our blood sugar is high, we might not feel the best. We might feel a bit jittery, can't focus so much, especially if it's low too. When you have a low blood sugar, you may be more irritable, just things may just stress you out a little bit more. So, if you are in a stressful work environment or, you have a lot going on, you want your mood to be stable so you can kind of handle what's coming at you. So making sure your blood sugars are stable is going to be your biggest key to kind of keep with you. So stable blood sugars is important.
Yeah.
So that's why having breakfast is, I would say, definitely important, and coffee doesn't count.
Yeah.
Coffee's,
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
So coffee is good though.
coffee is great, but have it with your meal. Um, there's
Okay.
other options, for quick breakfast ideas, like we've discussed, like certain bars you can carry with you. Even protein powder, adding that to your drinks is also an option as
Mhm.
well. So there are things that can work, and you just have to kind of get creative and, talk to someone about it to help kind of see how you can make
Yeah.
it work for you. But yeah, breakfast is
I love how you said I love how you talked about the blood sugar, and you mentioned the jittery because that was a big part of my life. I would come home every day and even drive sometimes. I'm like, but I ate the apple and I ate that,
yeah.
but I would be jittery and I didn't like I just thought that was normal. I had to get home and I had to eat, or maybe I was nervous, like but sometimes I would feel that jitteriness, and that's completely gone since I've learned how to balance that blood sugar. So that's huge. So to our listeners and viewers, like if you are feeling that, that could be indicative of your blood sugars being off and you have no idea, right?
Yeah, exactly. You have no
Yeah.
idea because sometimes
Yeah.
these symptoms are so subtle that you may just play it off as like, it's not a big deal. But yeah, if you're feeling like that at certain times of the day, then you definitely want to take a look to see, okay, where is that coming from? Did I eat enough? Did I get enough protein? To help sustain me. So that's really important.
Really
So
important.
definitely the number one thing is, have breakfast. Make sure it's protein rich. The other thing I would say is to have regular meals. So having
Okay.
meal timings is really important. And once you start adding in more protein, you shouldn't really feel the need to snack so much because that's going to sustain you. So a good meal should give you at least 4 hours of lasting power. So, you
Okay.
have breakfast at 8, then have lunch at noon. That's a fair time. And then, between lunch and dinner, it's a longer stretch of time. So that's when having a snack, again, with protein and carbohydrates, like the fruit in that example, would be perfect until you have dinner again.
So, I've always heard that having less food but more often throughout the day is better for you. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, is that true, or is it true for some people? Like, I don't know.
So when it comes to blood sugar regulation and insulin levels, I would say no. So
Okay.
do you have a history, or you may suspect, your blood sugars are off, then you definitely don't want to be eating every few hours because every single time we eat, our insulin levels go up. And insulin
Okay.
is a fat storing hormone. So when we have too much insulin in our body just stores fat. It's in a fat storing mode. So we want those insulin levels to come down. Okay. So that's why when we have certain meal times, like giving yourself 4 hours, that allows your body to reduce its insulin level. So then you eat again and then it goes up like it should and then it comes down. So if we're snacking all the time, our insulin levels are always high. They're never going down again. So
Ah,
makes
yeah.
sense. So when you have
Mm,
blood sugar imbalances, that could really, you could be on a high blood sugar and your blood sugar could just be going up and crashing throughout the day. So help with stabilizing your blood sugar levels again to keep that even steady level. I would definitely suggest having proper meal times, at least 4 hours
mm,
apart and not to be snacking.
okay. Not to be okay. So, the other sort of thing is, I mean, a lot of us will get up in the morning right away, and the first thing, because we're on the go. So we'll have our coffee and sometimes we'll have our breakfast in the car, like, or whatnot, right? So is it wrong? Like, when is the best time to drink coffee? I know you said with meal, but is it wrong to have your coffee as your first thing in the morning and then half an hour later when you're out the door having your breakfast? Or like, is there a right time to have coffee? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So yeah, so for people who have, you know, polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS, or insulin resistance, it is advised to have coffee after you eat because coffee is a stimulant and it could kind of give us a surge in our cortisol, right? So remember, cortisol is with our insulin. So yes, so in a perfect world, it would be great to eat first and then have your coffee. But again, remember everyone is a bit different. So maybe you have coffee and you feel fine and it's, you could check your own blood sugars to see if everything's okay. Some people do see a spike, some people don't. So that's very variable. But
Okay.
but to be safe, it's best to eat first and then have your coffee. I know that's
Okay. So, yeah, no, but I mean, if that's best for everyone in general, rather than having your coffee on an empty stomach, then that's good to know. Because I think most of us think like, oh, we'll just have our coffee because we'll be awake, and then maybe we'll even skip breakfast
exactly.
because now we feel, we're alert. and consider that kind of intermittent fasting or
Yeah.
whatnot, right? Which is a whole nother.
It is.
um, so, I okay, so ideas for just getting through my day sometimes. So, like sometimes I don't have time to eat lunch or I have time to eat lunch but I need to squeeze in a snack somewhere. So I know you mentioned bars, like are we talking granola bars, protein bars, and like what are other ideas that we could just kind of quickly, I want to say go to the back, eat quickly and then come back out and be, helping our patients. Like what are quick ways to do that? Quick meals, I should say, or snacks.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So again, just thinking protein. So protein and fiber. So having nuts on hand, they're portable. So you can always keep a stash of almonds or mixed nuts with you or in your purse, so you have something with you to go to help sustain you.
Okay.
Um, Bars. So yes, so granola bars don't really make that cut because they're mostly
As I thought.
yeah. You want to try to get one with a bar that has at least 8 grams of protein um,
Okay.
serving. So
So 8 grams of protein is key or more. Okay.
yeah, or more. I mean, sometimes it might be tough, but yeah, I would say around 8 grams would be good. So RX bars are great. They have 12 grams of protein and 5 grams of fiber. So those are really simple ingredients. So you can again, they're portable. You can keep them in your purse or at work, and it's just something to have when you're in a pinch. Something else that may require a little bit more thought would be, having hard boiled eggs. So making a batch on a Sunday, keeping them in the fridge because they last for the full week, and kind of grabbing them to add with your salad. So, yes, having a salad is great, but you want to make sure you have that protein in there. And, taking advantage of like canned beans, canned tuna, hard boiled eggs, those are great. Or even adding nuts in there, hemp seeds. These are just things that you can just add to help give you that protein as well. So that's really important. Um, Even just getting small yogurt cups or cottage cheese cups and keeping them at work in the fridge, those are amazing. There's not, you don't have to
Okay.
prepare anything. So that's always a good one as well. Yeah, even having like hummus in the fridge just as a spread or as a dip with vegetables, that could be another quick and easy kind of snack to have on hand as well. So those are just some quick ideas.
Quick, yeah. So when we look at granola bars, back to granola bars because that's my favorite. Like, what are we looking at? Not only with granola bars, but other
Yes.
snacks too, and maybe for our families and our kids as well. Like, so when something says this packet has, I don't know, 15 grams of carbs and it has 5 grams of protein, um, to me that's like okay, let's get it right. Like, I don't know. So, am I looking for like a key comparison between those numbers where my protein should be higher, the same, lower? Like, what are we looking for
Yeah.
that we know it's a good protein snack?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So when you're looking or reading a nutrition label is so important. So what you want to really pay attention to is the fiber. You want to pay
Oh,
attention to the
okay.
carb, and you want to pay attention to the protein. So
Okay.
whenever the protein is higher or similar to the carb content, so let's take the RX bar for example. I think the carbs are 14. I could be wrong. It depends
Okay.
on the flavor, but the protein is 12 and the fiber is 5. So there's almost a 1-to-1 ratio of the protein and carb. So that definitely is a good,
Okay. So 1 to 1 is a good indicator.
as close to 1-to-1 as possible.
Okay.
So with that example that you said, with a bar being 15 grams of carbs, which tends to be a typical bar is around 15 grams, around that. You want to make sure, yes, you're looking at that protein, which is 5 grams, which is not bad. You also want to look at that fiber. So if that fiber is
Okay.
also 5 or 4, then that could work as well. Because remember, the
Okay.
fiber, so we know protein keeps us full for longer, but another nutrient is also fiber. That also keeps you full for longer.
Okay.
And fiber
Okay.
is pretty much, it's actually only found in plant foods. So I'm talking about, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, beans and lentils, and whole grains. So if that bar had like oats in it, if it had some nuts in it, you would see that fiber gram being higher.
Okay.
But a lot of these snack
Interesting.
foods that
Okay.
are, that are marketed towards kids, like the Quaker bars, they really, yeah,
Yes, that's what we're sometimes giving them.
they
Yeah.
don't really have that much fiber in there.
Okay.
So
And I'm assuming the carb to protein ratio, which I've never looked at, is probably extremely high.
it's higher for sure. Yeah. So it's more of like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
treat than an actual healthy snack, um,
Got it.
unfortunately, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so you just want to be mindful of that. So you want to make sure you're looking at fiber, you want to make sure you're looking at the carbs, and you're looking at the protein.
So when we like, what do you feel are the changes that people can notice immediately, kind of, when we start adjusting our sugar levels or being more conscious of these things, maybe even a little bit? Um, what are changes that you feel we can notice within a few weeks or a month? Like, I mean, obviously, some people will have weight loss and that's the added benefit, but what are like some of the feelings and things that can help them?
Yes, that's a really great question. So definitely within the first week, if you adjust how you're eating, if you are adding more protein, you're being more mindful of your carbohydrates, you'll definitely notice that you have more energy.
Okay.
Right? That's what we all want. So increased energy is one of the first things that people will notice with their health and how they feel. You'll also notice another thing that people will notice is that they don't have that many cravings, or their cravings are not as intense. And again, this is the protein component. Because we are eating more protein, we're full for longer and our cravings won't be as intense. Because sometimes,
Right.
if you're not really noticing, or if you have a low protein diet or you have a high carb diet, you're constantly craving more carbs and sugar. So to kind of cut that cycle, is to make sure you're adding in protein to that.
So, like, energy will be better. We might notice like decreasing cravings. So the snacking like at nighttime or whenever. Sleep will be better.
Yeah, absolutely. You can
Yeah.
definitely
Okay.
notice an improvement in your sleep, because now, because your cravings are not there, or you're just more mindful of, like, how you're feeling. Um,
Yeah.
Definitely your sleep can improve as well.
A big thing for me was mood as well, right? Like, I don't know, I'm a nicer person then when my sugars are more
Exactly.
balanced.
And that makes sense, right? Because our blood sugar is a reflection of our energy. So if we are crabby or irritable and annoyed, it could be that our blood sugar is low. And a lot of people don't realize that when we have a low blood sugar, it's the same symptoms of anxiety. So it's hard to tell the difference, right?
That's key. That's key. That was key for me. So, yeah,
So that is, yeah,
definitely.
definitely seeing an improvement in your mood, just feeling more in control is definitely a big one for sure.
And for women also there's cycles, right? Like there's that regulation of cycles, I guess is related a little bit to the insulin, the blood sugar and all of that, right?
So
So
different phases of your
that's
cycle, we tend to be more insulin resistant right before our cycle starts. So we may have more cravings and stuff like that. And that's okay. You can honor that. But as you are more aware of your feeling and your body awareness, you'll know, okay, this is probably, I'm feeling like this because my cycle is about to start. And that's why it's so important to track your cycle as well, because it's just giving you information on your body. And that way, the more you know, the better choices you can make, for sure.
right.
Yeah.
So, kind of like to sum it up, so like food pairing is important, right? And then being more conscious and not snacking as much, but being fuller at your meals and being more conscious of what you're eating, I
Yeah,
guess.
absolutely. So if you find, you're really hungry in the afternoon, and the thing is, with our circadian rhythm, we naturally have a dip in our energy levels around 3 o'clock, like that afternoon.
Okay.
Naturally, we have that. But if you feel like it's, really intense, your cravings in the afternoon, you really want to look at your lunch to see how you can make that more satisfying, how you can make that more robust. And you may need to add more food. You may need to eat more. You may want to add more protein to that to help satiate you, so it'll carry you through in the afternoon. So try that. Try that for a few days and see how you feel. It can make a huge difference.
Yeah, because I know like when I would come home from work, like by 4 or 5, whatever it is, like I would binge
Yeah.
eat, right? I don't know. I think everyone does, right? You have those chips at home and you just binge eat because you come home, you're trying to make dinner, but you're hungry and you're
Yeah.
crabby. And so you just take the chips, right? And you keep going, right? So I think yes, exactly what you said, what has helped is eating better at lunch and being more conscious of your meals before 3 or 4 o'clock.
Yes, exactly. And that way
That's
you
great.
know, right? And then once you are more aware of your meals, that's why I'm a huge proponent of having, balanced regular meals. You'll see how you're feeling, and you can it'll be so much easier to be like, oh, I didn't eat enough, or it was a busy day. And then you can kind of be like, okay, that's why I feel like this. It just helps you
Exactly.
connect the
Yeah.
dots better, right? When things are more
Right.
predictable and on schedule. And another thing that we haven't touched on is also hydration.
Oh, yes, sorry. That's the thing I'm weakest on, so that's important, right?
Yes. So hydration,
Okay.
again, is super important to help with blood sugar. It also, again, helps with staying full, and for concentration and being alert. And I know with a lot of healthcare workers, sometimes you're always with, your patients, so it's hard to drink water, right? Especially if you're wearing a mask as well. So that's something that you really want to pay attention to. So starting your day, I always tell everyone, like, at your bedside table, keep a bottle of water, a glass of water, and try to drink that first thing right when you wake up.
Okay.
Because when we sleep, we're in a state of dehydration. So we need to hydrate upon waking up. So really do that first. Then you can go on with your day, have your breakfast, have
Yeah.
your coffee, and then you'll be good.
Yeah, like two things. I think that that was huge because when I would get up in the morning, like a lot, like many of us, we have coffee, but I guess I never realized I'm already dehydrated and then I'm having coffee, which is probably further dehydrating me. And then I'm having the water, right? So no wonder I'm not as like happy in the mornings or I'm like crabbier and I'm like, but switching that up to the water first and then the coffee after or with your meal was huge for me.
Yes.
The other tip I remember you and I had talked a while ago was I don't know, it worked for me, was I don't like water, right? Like just water's not my thing. But having something as simple as this was having water, like a water bottle with a straw.
Yeah. Yeah.
That like changed my life.
Oh, good.
Because I always assumed that straws were for kids. Like I'm not gonna have a water bottle with a straw. But that was really helpful because I don't remember the philosophy around it, but I think you said it was just easier to sip or something, right?
It is definitely
Yeah.
having a straw top if you're someone who forgets to drink water, because if you have a top on that you have to unscrew, and then it just takes so long, right? So
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
if you have a water bottle with a straw, when you're driving, when you're on the computer, it's so easy to sip. And if you have a
Yeah.
problem with getting in your water intake, try switching your water bottle so it's a straw top, and I promise you it will make a difference.
Yeah, it did. No, you're
Right?
right.
No, these
Anar, honestly, thank you. This was like amazing, such helpful tips to our listeners and viewers. But you have to tell us where can our listeners, viewers find you? Like there are people who I'm sure are struggling with blood sugar balance, eating healthy, again, weight loss, mood, stress levels. Where can they find you, for advice, seeking help, booking sessions with you? How can they reach
Yeah,
you?
absolutely. So they can reach me on my website. It's www.anarallidina.com, just my first and last name. I'm also active on Instagram when I post a lot of tips and recipes. So it's
Yes.
Anar, ANAR underscore dietitian. That's my handle. So you can definitely ask me questions, reach out to me there, and I'll be more than happy to connect.
Yeah, and that's actually where I saw some of your videos and tips that kind of helped me and even just like your shopping tips, right? Those are huge. Like, okay, a lot of us go to Walmart or Costco and when you go there and show us, "Oh, you can find this," that's, great. That's super helpful. So, thank
Of
you.
course. Yes.
And thank you to our listeners and viewers and thank you to you, Anar.
Thanks
So,
so much.
hope you everyone has a great day.